Good morning. At this time, please begin the live stream of this meeting. While we are beginning live stream, I would like to say happy birthday to Dr. LaDonna Thomas, who's celebrating a wonderful 50 years. Happy birthday. The board meeting of the North Carolina Board of Nursing will now convene. We have a quorum for the meeting. This is an official meeting of the Board of Nursing being conducted in accordance with North Carolina's opening meetings law under Article 33C, Chapter 143 of the North Carolina General Statutes. The board recognizes the public's right to attend and observe this meeting. As such, this meeting is being streamed on the board's YouTube channel as well as being recorded. The board's mission, vision, and values drive our work as a board and serve as a reminder to us as we carry out our business. The mission of the board is to protect the public by regulating the practice of nursing. Our vision is exemplary nursing care for all. In pursuit of our mission and vision, we focus on three core values: equity, we are committed to fairness and justice; integrity, we act in good faith in protecting the public; and agility, we are responsive to emerging healthcare trends. I will now move to item M2 on the agenda, which is the ethics awareness and conflict of interest reminder. In accordance with the State Ethics Act and the Code of Conduct for members of the North Carolina Board of Nursing, it is the duty of every member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. Does any member have any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any undue participation in the particular matter involved. Seeing none, welcome again, all board members. And I would like to also welcome all of our guests and our staff, board staff, and all of those who are observing on our YouTube channel. Happy New Year as well. Are there any announcements at this time? Seeing none, in review of the agenda, item M4, are there any additions, modifications, or reordering requested at this time? Hearing or seeing none, do I have a motion regarding adoption of the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I move we accept.
Thank you. Ms. Layden has moved to adopt the consent agenda. Do I have a second? Thank you. It has been seconded by Andrea Jepson. I will now call for the vote. All in favor by show of hands. The vote is unanimous. Thank you. Moving to agenda item M6, adoption of meeting agenda. Do I have a motion regarding adoption of the meeting agenda? Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Steele. Dr. Steele has moved to adopt the meeting agenda. Do I have a second? It has been seconded by Dr. Carmen Shaw. I will now call for a vote. All in favor by show of hands. The vote is unanimous. It carries. Moving to open comment period. Thank you. So we are now at the open comment period portion of our agenda. The purpose of this open comment period is to provide members of the public an opportunity to share their concerns, offer views, and present questions regarding issues that impact nursing and nursing regulation. At this time, we have no request to speak during open comment period. Therefore, we will move on to the next agenda item. I would now like to recognize the following committee members from the Governance and Finance Committee. Dr. LaDonna Thomas, myself, Dr. Raquel Ingram, Tom Minowitz as our chair, and our staff liaisons, Angela Ellis and Gail Bellamy. I will ask that Ms. Bellamy come to the table, and then I will turn it over to Tom Minowitz, our chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Feels a little odd going this early in the meeting. Normally we're a little bit later. So everybody's awake now, so we'll try to keep you that way. Again, I'd like to, my name's Tom Minowitz, Chair of the Governance and Finance Committee. And I'd like to first recognize some of the folks that Dr. Ingram already has, but I want to do so again. Dr. LaDonna Thomas, Dr. Raquel Ingram, and Dr. Laura Bartlett, who's no longer a board member, but was at our last meeting. I'd also like to recognize the committee liaisons, Angela Ellis, and of course, Gail Bellamy. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is our audit report, and I'd like to introduce Sandy Newell from CPA Assurance a CPA Assurance Partner at Bernard Robinson and Company to present the auditor's report.
Now can you hear me? Okay. We're going to start by talking about the audit. This letter that's on the screen is a required communication to governance. I want you all to know that we did meet with the Finance Committee and review the audit results in more detail, but the audit went very well. And I'd like to thank Gail and Hema and Crystal for all their assistance with the audit. Y'all are a pleasure to work with. Over the years, I have really enjoyed working with you all. I am retiring the end of May, so this is my last board meeting with you all. And I just wanted y'all to know that I have appreciated it and considered it a privilege to work with the board. So we're going to start by looking at the governance letter. This is a required communication, lets you know how the audit went. And it kind of outlines our responsibilities in relationship to the audit, as well as letting you know, and if you want to keep rolling, that's fine. There were no new accounting standards that affected the Board of Nursing this year, so nothing new that had to be adopted. Also continuing to let you know that there are estimates in the financial statements, and those are outlined on page 2 of the letter, things like depreciation. We did not encounter any difficulties. Everything went well with the audit. Okay, do you mind doing it for me, Gail? We did propose 2 immaterial journal entries, didn't need to be made, but they wanted to make them, so those were made. One of the things that we do when we do the audit is we walk through all the ways that the board receives money and the ways money goes out. And we look to see in those processes if there's good controls, and we would make any recommendations if we felt like they were needed. Or we would let you know if we saw anything in a management letter that required your attention, and we did not see anything like that. Everything was in great shape. We did require management to make some representations to us, and other than that, no management letter. So as I said, very clean audit. Then the actual statements. I'm just going to hit the highlights of these. First of all, you'll see the management's discussion and analysis. This is required for occupational licensing boards to have a management's discussion and analysis. And basically, it gives you some financial highlights. This is on page 1 of the financial statements for those of you that are looking at the actual pages. And then on page 2, there's a synopsis of 3 years of financial information for both the balance sheet and the P&L, which is good information. On page 3 of the management discussion and analysis, you'll see factors impacting future periods. This is an opportunity where management can let the reader of the financial statement know things that are going on with the board. So this is prepared by management. We review it for just reasonableness. We do not audit it. On the next page, page 4, this is our audit opinion. And this is the best opinion that you can have. It's an unmodified or clean opinion, which means that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And it does go through an outline so that you're aware management's responsibility for those financial statements, and then our responsibilities as your auditors. And you will see, I like to point out to everyone, because sometimes people think an audit is absolute assurance. It is reasonable assurance. The actual first statement is the statement of net position or balance sheet. And this is where you see the assets of the board, the liabilities, and then the net position. Net position is like your equity. So if we take your assets, less your liabilities, that's your equity or net position. In looking at your assets, you can see that they went from 28.3 million in the prior year to 29.6 million for the end of 2024. Liabilities remained roughly the same, went up about 400,000 just because of some timing in your accounts payable. But as board members, I normally tell you to focus on your net position, those equity numbers, which is almost 6 million in your fixed assets, which is the building and everything in it. Because we look at your capital assets at the top, which is the cost, less your depreciation, and you have no debt on this building. So you have an equity of almost $6 million in your building, and then unrestricted equity of 13.1 million. So we consider that to be a strong equity position. The next statement is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. This is where you see your operating revenues. So this is when you're looking at your monthly reports against your budget, you're looking at these numbers, your revenue and expenses. So you ended up with operating revenues of almost $12 million. You were 11.9, up from 11.5 last year. Normally, we see the increases in license renewals, which was what it was for 24. And then also the APRN revenue, as you know, was way up. Operating expenses were up about 13% over the prior year, primarily in your salaries and related benefits, which is very normal, and then in your operations. And as you know, in your operating budget, you all budgeted to spend more money in your operations. You did some work in cyber and infrastructure, and also had some research expenses. Those were budgeted numbers where you're investing back into the board. But we ended up with total operating expenses of about 12.3 million. So your operating loss for the year was about $373,000. But then we look at your investment income that gets added to that. Right below that, you see the 1.3 million of investment income. So that includes your interest, your dividends, and any unrealized gains and realized gains and losses in the market. So overall, a change in net position to the positive of $932,000. So again, a very positive number. The market has been good to us in the last year, knock on wood. The next statement is the statement of cash flows. And this basically just shows you the cash that came in, where it came from. Like, did it come from operations, capital and financing activities, or investing activities? And it's broken down in that fashion. And then overall, you had an increase in your cash of about $285,000. That's somewhat driven by how much you're investing in investments. The next part of the financial statements are the notes to the financial statements. And I'm just going to walk you through very briefly for those that haven't seen them before. So note 1 is just kind of tells who you are and what your significant accounting policies are, which are required to be disclosed. That takes you through several pages. We get to page 13, Gail, down to deposits and investments. So this is where we give information about all those investments that you carry, the custodial credit risk, interest rate risk, and just your credit risk, and also the maturities. So when you're looking at that statement of net position, anything that's going to mature or could mature in less than a year is in your current assets. Anything that's going to mature past a year is going to be in long-term or other current assets on the balance sheet. So we use a year as considering whether it's current or long-term. There's information in note 3 about your investments, and I know that Wes will be talking more about this, but you can see at the bottom of page 14, the breakdown of what was in CDs, government bonds, equities, and then the investments that were in the deferred comp plan. And then you'll see levels, level 1, 2, and 3. So what those levels mean is however easy it is to go out and find the value. If it's really easy, it's level 1. If you have to work a little bit harder, it's level 2. Level 3 is really difficult. So you only have, the board is invested in level 1 and level 2 type investments. Note 4 gives some information on your property and equipment breakdown between land, building, and furniture and equipment. Note 5 is just some change in showing the change in your long-term liabilities, which for you all is primarily accrued vacation and deferred revenues. So note 6, I do want to focus on a little bit. That is talking about designated net assets. And what that means as board members, you all from time to time are talking about the future, and when that $13 million that I talked about as that equity, you've gone in and designated portions of that equity that you know expenses that are going to come up in the future. And that's what this note is outlining for the reader, is that there are amounts that have been designated by the board for information systems, capital asset replacement, and they're kind of listed right there. And so this note shows the activity in those designations of the net assets. Note 7 gives some information about your retirement plan. Note 8, the leases that you have. That was a new standard a couple years ago. Note 9, information about your deferred comp plan. And then 10 or 11 are basic notes, just risk management and subsequent events. We are required to put the amount of time and fee right on this financial statement. The state of North Carolina requires that. We do have one supplemental information schedule, which is basically showing what your budget was to actual numbers. So the actual numbers would agree back to that profit and loss that we looked at, but we've added the budget column because that's what you all are used to seeing, is kind of your budget to actual. And so this is just kind of a reiteration of that. And it's in there for both years, 24 and 23. So I, as I said, have no concerns. Everything was very clean. Everyone was very helpful in us completing the audit. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. I'm happy to take questions regarding audit processes or financial statements, any questions that you all might have. I know everybody's eyes kind of glaze over a little bit. All right. Thank you all so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sandy. So are there any questions at all about not just the process, but about the numbers themselves? None? Okay. Madam Chair, the recommendation from the committee is that the board accept the auditor's report as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Menowitz. The motion has been read or shared by or moved by Tom Menowitz. Any further discussion? If not, we do not need a second because this is a committee recommendation. All in favor of the recommendation by show of hands? And the vote is unanimous. Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce Wells Fargo Advisors to present our market analysis and investment performance report. I didn't see him.
Hopefully he's on his way.
Okay. So we'll come back to that hopefully. We'll go over a couple of other things and hopefully he'll come in, and if he does, we'll give him a little bit of a hard time about it. The statement of net position, and Sandy went through a lot of this stuff, but I just kind of wanted to reiterate a couple things. The statement of net position summarizes the financial position, and if you think about us as a person, like I think sometimes it's easier for us to imagine it that way. So our total assets would be everything that we own, which in our sense would be our house, our cars, our furniture, everything that we own, our investments, our stocks, our bonds, our 401ks or whatever. Liabilities is everything that we owe, our mortgage, what we still owe on our car, any debt that we have anywhere. And then our net position would be what our net worth is a good way to view it. So our assets totaled $30.7 million and our liabilities totaled $10.6 million, with our net position totaling $20,210,000. So it's obviously very good. And from my perspective, and we talked about this in the meeting, although that looks great, one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of that money is in investments, and investments have done well, but they can also go down. So although we say, oh, our net worth is $20 million, well, we can come back next year and it might be 17 million because of things that happen to go south, or it could be worse than that. Hopefully not, but it could. It's important to understand that concept of it. The next item to talk about would be our statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in the net position. And the statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in net position details how the financial position changed during our first quarter. And our revenue, the operating revenues totaled just over $3 million, which was an increase of $74,500 or 2.5% increase. Our non-operating revenue from investments totals $1.1 million, and our total revenue was $1.149 million. Expenditures totaled $3,053,000 and were $215,000 or 6.6% less than projected in the budget. So that's always good. Compared to the same period last year where expenditures were up, compared to the same period last year, expenditures were up about $52,000 or 1.8%. Our net position at the beginning of the fiscal year was $19,061,000. Net revenue totaled $1.1 million, and the resultant net position was $20.2 million. I really can't stall much longer for Wes, so we may have to come back to him a little bit later. Unless we wanted to sing for LaDonna today for her birthday, but
If you want to lead the song.
I'll start it, but that's about it. There's no solo on my part. But that's all from the Governance and Finance Committee, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Minowitz. We'll certainly, when Wes comes, we will make certain to come back to this. But thank you so much for sharing the financial report. I will now recognize Dr. Crystal Tillman to present the Chief Executive Officer activities.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to everyone. It looks like we have a full crowd today, board staff and visitors, and certainly thank you to our board members who serve. Also wanted to recognize a person that keeps us safe while we're here, and that's Officer Min, who is Raleigh Police Department. So thank you for your service, not only to us, but to the city. And I always hope if I ever get pulled over, it's by you. So, anyways. So here we go into a new year, and we're going in with a blast. So we'd like to welcome our newest board member who got sworn in yesterday, Miss Angela Moore, and she is in the RN staff nurse seat. So welcome, and we look forward to working with you. So our mission is certainly, we say, how well is the Board of Nursing? How are we as board members? How are we meeting our mission? And our mission, of course, like Madam Chair said earlier, is to protect the public by regulating the practice of nursing. Our vision, exemplary nursing care for all who come to North Carolina or live here. So just a few slides of how we are meeting our mission. This is Allison Bailey and her team do a fantastic job in compliance and monitoring. Here you will see licensees who are in the alternative program, the discipline, probationary non-screeners, the probationary screeners, intervention program, and non-disciplinary consent order. You can see the numbers for October, November, and December. So thank you for that information. Our top 3 questions for practice department, which is led by Joyce Winslow. General scope of practice questions for RN and LPNs, accepting an assignment and staffing, and cosmetic procedures. So they've had many calls over the last time that we met. Education, we always love to look at our NCLEX statistics. So from July 24 to September 24, we see that the orange is the North Carolina pass rate and the blue being the national pass rate. So as you can see, for the PN, we are above national average. And for the RN, we are a little bit below. So the national average is 89.2%, and we're right at 87.71%. In legal, look at this. Since our last board meeting, they have closed 100 cases, which is fantastic. Investigations. Wow, our investigators do such great work. Here you can see the average cycle time by the primary violation. And when you look there at the bottom, you can see that some of those take longer, like for instance, investigation by a remote state. That's because we're waiting on the other state to give us the information. So therefore, sometimes if it's a criminal case, it may take longer. But our cycle times are way above average. Licensure for RN. So as you can see, it's broken down by exam, endorsement, reinstatement, and renewal for the last 3 months, October, November, and December. And you can see our renewal numbers are certainly the highest. Same thing as looking at the LPNs for the last 3 months. You can see their numbers as well. And certainly people endorsing to the state are reinstatement. And APRNs, look at the nurse practitioners. That's certainly, the numbers are really high for nurse practitioners. And the second would be, of course, CRNAs, and then our certified nurse midwives. And I'm happy to report that Nurse Licensure Compact, we call the NLC, we are now up to 43 states, which is fantastic. So very happy about that. I'm also pleased to report that I got elected to the NLC Executive Committee. So we had our first meeting in Chicago last month. So we made a photo right out in front of the Christmas tree. So NLC education session that we're having for board members and staff, it's going to be March 4th and 5th. Jim Puente is going to be here in person. He's the executive director of the NLC. We also have Fred Knight, an attorney for Arkansas State, and they're going to be here doing a 2-day seminar. So I certainly hope you can attend. And then our North Carolina Organization of Nurse Leaders, Emerging Leaders Program. We have 4 nurses that applied and they were able to get in. So we're very proud of Ann Hardy, Jennifer Pelletier, Kimberly Luciana, and Stacy Thompson. So congratulations, and look forward to your leadership in the organization as well. Dr. Griffin and her team, they had an abstract accepted. It's through the Future of Nursing, Comprehensive Nursing Assessment for Social Determinants of Health. So we look forward to you presenting that information at the Association of Community Health Nurse Educators annual conference. So congratulations. And now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Jennifer Lewis, Director of Education. Her team has just done a fantastic job of doing a survey, and she's going to give us some results of Hurricane Helene, the survey that they did. And we also have another survey going out for APRN. So I will hand it over to Dr. Lewis.
Thank you, Dr. Tillman. I am pleased to share feedback from our Western North Carolina academic programs regarding the board's response in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Helene. So in response to former Governor Cooper's declared state of emergency related to the hurricane, the Board of Nursing not only worked to understand the needs of programs in Western North Carolina, but we implemented several extensions and waivers of existing regulations to assist programs in that part of the state. And as recovery efforts persist, the Board of Nursing sought to better understand the impressions of program directors regarding those enacted waivers and extensions, as well as the communication rendered during that time period. So at the direction of Dr. Griffith and with input from the education staff, a survey was created and disseminated to 22 program directors representing 33 programs located in Western North Carolina to solicit that information. So with 16 out of the 22 program directors responding for a response rate of 73%, I'm pleased to share that 93% of responding program directors stated that the communications from the North Carolina Board of Nursing were either very effective or somewhat effective, and that the waivers and temporary measures enacted in response to the declared state of emergency either fully or mostly met their program needs, 93%. When asked to identify what aspect of the board's response was most helpful, 31% of respondents used the term flexibility, which was afforded through the waiver enactment and those extensions. So they named flexibility as being most helpful to them. Many referenced specific waiver provisions they found helpful, such as extensions on the annual report submissions and flexibility on the focused client care required hours. They also really appreciated the timely and compassionate communication from Board of Nursing Education Department staff. We certainly reached out on many occasions, phone calls as we were able. Communications were difficult, especially early on. And we emailed and continue to follow up as well. When asked to provide additional feedback to enhance the board's response to future disasters or emergencies, there were a few suggestions to provide more information regarding documentation needs during the disaster, to seek proactive opportunities to plan for future disasters, and then to continue to engage in timely communication. So overall, we believe the Education Department communicated in a timely and sympathetic manner to learn the needs of programs and to respond in kind. The survey results overwhelmingly show that the waivers and the temporary measures that were put into place were helpful to programs, granted needed flexibility to support continued matriculation. The feedback received was positive and supports the ongoing work of the department and is reflective of the efforts to support regulatory compliance while meeting the needs of our academic learning partners across the state. So Dr. Tillman, thank you again for the opportunity to share these findings, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, for that report and for your team, all the hard work that you all did. So thank you. Next, we will discuss the strategic plan update, and I'll recognize Dr. Sarah Griffith, our Chief Nursing Officer, and Angela Ellis, and Angie Mathis, Director of Investigations.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. And thank you, Dr. Tillman, for the opportunity to present an update on our current strategic plan. In your packet, the strategic plan starts on page 34 for your review. The PowerPoint will highlight the information that's in your packet. This presentation will again focus on our strategic plan, where we're going, and what we've accomplished over this past quarter. The strategic plan serves as our guide as board staff in meeting our mission of public protection. The strategic plan is a collective effort. So although you see 3 individuals sitting at the table, it's an entire organization that works to ensure that this strategic plan is met. During each board meeting, we highlight the team that we work the closest with, but this is not an all-inclusive list. As I said, we have staff members throughout the organization that are engaged in this work, but these are the individuals that we work the closest with. Myself, Angie, and Angela are the champions for the strategic plan. So we work through the strategic plan with all the departments. The strategic planning is not new to the organization. We've engaged in strategic planning for a little bit over 20 years. This plan is developed in cycles of 4 years and is updated to the board at least 3 times per year. Again, the development of this plan is ongoing to achieve the plan, and it's rooted in our mission, vision, and our values. The development of the strategic plan was focused with board members, staff, and external stakeholders. That was to develop our current strategic plan, and we'll be talking more about where we'll be going with our next planning efforts for the next comprehensive strategic plan. You as board members develop the initiatives and the objectives for the strategic plan, and then staff work with Dr. Tillman in developing department-specific targets to reach per calendar year. Our next strategic cycling plan is from 2026 to 2029. It's kind of hard to think that far in the future, but we will do that. Some of the items that we achieved in 2024, a timeline was finalized for an electronic document management system to implement our state functional schedule. Y'all received a highlight of the onboard process for our new board member portal that will be starting in early 2025. A virtual workshop for newly licensed nurses was developed. Rules were promulgated for Senate Bill 20 related to certified nurse midwife practice. We've done multiple presentations for pre-licensure nurse and education programs. At the September board meeting, SHEPS was here and presented some findings on the APRN workforce study. And then we've also developed an internship program internally. So for our staff activities, this is really focused on Strategic Initiative 1, Objective 4, increasing the visibility and impact of the organization. There are multiple staff members and board members that I've learned yesterday that are completing the NCSBN ICRS courses. We also have 8 staff members that are serving on NCSBN committees, and those are Dr. Tillman, the chair of the NCLEX examination committee, and like she referenced earlier, most recently the executive committee for the Interstate Licensure Compact. Tony Graham serves on the NCSBN board of directors. Dr. Terry Ward, Dr. Anne Marie Milner, Stacy Thompson, and Christina Deaver all are serving on the NCLEX item review subcommittee with NCSBN. I serve on the Governance and Bylaws Committee, and Meredith Paris serves on the Model Act and Rules Committee and the NLC Rules Committee. So very active with NCSBN, and that helps us bring information back to our state. We have staff that are serving on multiple external advisory committees as well as task force. I'm very excited to present this, that we provided over 66 presentations, and that's not just one individual providing those presentations. It's multiple individuals throughout the organization providing those presentations to upwards of about 4,000 licensed nurses, and that's RNs, LPNs, and advanced practice nurses. We attend statewide conferences so that we can engage with nurses and provide them with resources that are available by the Board of Nursing and to engage in conversations with them. And then we also had 5 staff members that received the Just Culture certification this past year. So very exciting. I'll now turn it over to Angie Mathis. Thank you.
Good morning. So I'm now going to review strategic initiatives number 1 and 2, and just a couple of the targets that we worked on or continue to work on. And some of this will be a repeat from some of the stuff that Dr. Griffith went over. First target under ensure fair, efficient, and effective regulatory practices. We're looking at all of our regulatory policies to ensure that they align with law and rules, to make sure we don't have things in policy that conflict or are unnecessary, and the policy manual finalization is coming very close. Perform positively to benchmarks for cycle time and licensure. Our licensure department continues to shine brighter than probably any other board in terms of time cycle for issuing a license once that licensee or applicant has submitted a complete packet. It's about 2 to 3 days. We continue to review sample cases in investigations and legal to look at when a case is closed, does the violation at the end match up with what all has been cited if there are consent orders or any violations. So we're continuing to work on that. And we're happy to have a master's intern working with us this semester, or this entire year, and he's going to be working with us some on that. We're also looking at the mental health target, and we're going to develop a list of providers throughout the state that are willing and able and competent or to do fit for duty evaluations. So when we as staff have nurses that need fit for duty, or if someone comes to LRP or hearing or something and you as board members feel that a fitness for duty evaluation is warranted, we want to have some lists of people so we can give those to licensees just to say, here, you can go to any of these, and try to have folks throughout the state just to make that a little bit easier when we do have to have those evaluations completed on our licensees. Provide adequate resources to fund program services and operations with a strong financial position. You've just heard Mr. Minowitz's and Gail Bellamy's presentation and the results of a clean audit for last fiscal year. Increase visibility and impact of the organization. We regularly post information on all of our social media sites, and I assume that a lot of you probably follow us on social media. If you don't, please do, because we push out information on a regular basis to our licensees and to the public. Identify opportunities to communicate with the public and licensed nurses. As Dr. Griffith said, we provided a lot of presentations last year, attended several statewide conferences to set up vendor tables or as invited speakers. Dr. Griffith and I attended the North Carolina Nurses Association annual meeting in September, along with some other staff, and Dr. Griffith presented kind of a Board of Nursing update, which was very well received. And we had a vendor table set up where nurses could come and talk to us and engage and ask questions. And it was kind of nice to put faces for our nurses who some of them would come up and they wouldn't even know the difference. Like, oh, I pay my dues, and trying to educate them on the difference in the Nurses Association and the Board of Nursing, and just kind of getting our face out there and letting them know who we are and all the good things that we do. As Dr. Tillman had in her slide, the abstract was submitted to the AHEC Nurse Council. And currently, we also are collaborating with the North Carolina Board of Pharmacy and the North Carolina Medical Board about infusion hydration type businesses, because that is a big thing right now because it's very profitable, I suppose. And everyone seems to want to be in on that. So we're working with them to share some information to providers and licensees who are interested into doing this business, to help ensure that we're protecting the public and that they are doing things in a safe and in compliant manner as well. Increased visibility and impact. I won't read all the numbers, but you can see all of our social media followers continue to grow. Each and every month we get more followers on all of our social media. Of course, our meetings, including this one today, is streamed on YouTube, so that increases access to folks who may not be able to travel to Raleigh to see a meeting, and for students as well. They can tune in if programs don't have the resources to send students here. They can certainly watch our meetings on YouTube. Education sessions for nursing students, as Dr. Griffith said, we continue to provide education sessions going to nursing schools for pre-licensure programs to help educate them on what the Board of Nursing is, and helping them to also have a face for the Board of Nursing, know what we do, help them to get started out on their right foot as they enter into the profession. And Dr. Kimberly Lewis-Sana is also doing presentations for APRN students in various programs. Our initiative number 2, advanced best practices in nursing regulation. As was already mentioned, the SHEP Center did a research project on nursing workforce and APRN workforce, and they presented to you all at the September board meeting. And we're currently now reviewing applications for APRNs, the questions that we ask on renewal applications, to see if there's additional data sets that we might need to enhance the information we have on workforce, to see if we need to add any questions or modify any of the questions on our applications. Conducting research on medication-assisted treatment. on that research study. Ensure that our current and evolving roles align with regulation, as was already mentioned, based on our memorandum of understanding with the Midwifery Joint Committee. Staff completed the rulemaking process. The rules went into effect in October that were resulting from Senate Bill 20. SAVE Act revisions. Of course, last year, we continued to work with our legislators to educate them and answer questions and provide information as requested to enhance their understanding of nursing practice and APRN practice in particular. Board staff also attended an NCNA strategy session at the end of 2024 related to SAVE Act. Opioid epidemic, substance use disorders, and mental health. Allison Bailey's team, they are looking to increase the geographic range and number of treatment facilities and addictionologists to provide to our licensees who need to engage with those services. And she and her team meet with the North Carolina Alternative to Discipline Consortium, which includes alternative to discipline folks from other licensing boards in our state to gather more information about what other boards require for reentry into practice for folks with substance use disorder. Dr. Luisana and I continue to review the DHHS query audits that we periodically receive. And this is where DHHS is running reports to see out of licensees that are prescribing controlled substances. That information gets entered into a state database that is compared with DEA database to see if everything matches. And we get reports when things don't match. Does that mean that someone is doing something illegal or wrong? No, it does not. It means that the name of the prescriber may not quite match up the name that the DEA has. So if someone's got married, sometimes they're changing practices and they haven't updated the DEA information. So it's doing us basically an audit to try to clean up some of the data and make sure that folks who are prescribing controlled substances have everything they're supposed to have with DHHS and with DEA. And we've been getting these reports kind of on and off for about maybe 2 years now, 2 or 3 years. We received one report and then DHHS realized that there needed to be some data cleaning. But when since we've been receiving the reports, some pretty impressive numbers here. Since mid-2023, the number of unique DEA licensees, meaning that there's some kind of inconsistency, that has decreased by 24%. So it's cleaning, the data is getting clean. Number of dispensed prescriptions decreased by 40%. So when we get this report, it gives us the prescribers. It also tells us how many prescriptions they're prescribing and how many opioids. And the number of Schedule 2s and 3s have decreased by 45%. So we're not only seeing the data improve, but the prescribing of the opioids is also, we're seeing a downward trend in that. And Dr. Luisana and I, we've been working on putting information out on social media, as well as sending letters to the licensees that end up on this list to remind them of the requirements, because this is part of a statewide requirement of the STOP Act in response to the opioid crisis. And now Angela Ellis will go over the last two initiatives.
Thank you, Angie. So strategic initiative number 3 is to cultivate an organization that supports diversity, equity, and inclusion. So our objective is to foster creativity, innovation, and outstanding leadership. And as you can see by the first target, this is widely through our organization. So you've heard much about what staff have done. We're highly engaged on all levels to bring information back to you. We developed and implemented the NCBON internship program, as Dr. Griffith mentioned, and we have the ECU student intern working with investigations this year. We will continue to develop this program to get people into regulations so that they understand the mission, vision, and values of the board. Strategic initiative number 4, foster mobility of licensed nurses, and facilitate access to safe nursing care. So we do support ongoing nursing workforce trends, the nursing education summary report, completed the pre-licensure nursing education annual report survey, and extensions were provided for those in the western part of the state due to the effects of Hurricane Helene. Nursing 2 education survey planned for March 2025. Here you have a list of the 2025 targets, and I'm going to turn that over to Sarah. Okay.
So our targets for 2025, and again, this is a organizational-wide development of these targets. The different departments develop the targets, they share them with us, we review those, and then we have a discussion with Dr. Tillman to determine, are we on the right track? Are we doing what is needed for the organization? So for the compliance department, they're going to work on increasing the number of the addictionologists for our Board of Nursing list. Our finance department, again, working on that unqualified clean audit. Investigations is going to review complaint forms and processes and develop FAQs to facilitate individuals submitting complaints to us in a very efficient manner. The legal department is going to review templates to ensure consistency, and they're also going to review a protocol on behavioral health because we're starting to see an uptick in our behavioral health cases across the organization. Our licensure department is going to review processes and applications for those professional organizations and corporations, and they're going to ensure that procedures align with the newly updated exam and endorsement rules that Angela will be talking about later in the board meeting. Our education department, led by Dr. Lewis, will revise and publish an updated simulation guidance statement that's on our website. They're going to look at revising an application for our pre-licensure nurse and education programs, and they will be hosting an NCSBN NCLEX regional workshop in March. The practice department is working on revising our position statements, and we will be presenting later on in the board meeting an EMP committee charge for your consideration. The APRN department, as Angie Mathis just talked about, is working on the CSRS compliance audits to monitor trends and to provide that appropriate education to our advanced practice nurses who prescribe. We're developing FAQs for all advanced practice roles, and then we're going to look at revising those APRN applications to include some of those workforce questions. In the research department, we're working on finalizing that research study for MATs. For IT, evaluate the current database to identify opportunities for efficiencies and review a disaster preparedness plan. And the last department in administration is working on developing, as you saw yesterday, that secure portal for board members, and also looking at the periodic review of the Nursing Practice Act.
Okay, so we have next steps. As you see, we're going to develop the 2026-2029 strategic plan. We have a timeline developed. We have staff from all areas of the organization who will be involved. This is truly from board staff all the way up to board members in developing the strategic plan for the board. That final strategic plan will come before you in January of 2026 for approval. So it's going to be a busy 2025 for members and staff as we begin to look on down the road for nursing. Questions?
This is, Madam Chair, I have a question. This is for the, topic around the nurse aid survey that you're gonna do in March 2025. So, what do we, or you aim to get from that survey, and who perhaps will receive that survey? Who's your audience that you're targeting?
So it's not related to NA2 practice. It's related to NA2 education programs. So it'll go to the NA2 education programs.
Thank you for that clarity.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I do have one. The areas that we have not achieved, will we consider those for the forthcoming strategic plan?
We typically pull forward any items that weren't achieved on the current plan for consideration for the next plan and conversation around, do we still need to keep this on the current plan?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, well, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Tillman, for your update. And board members, let's take about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back to agenda item M11. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to jump back into the governance and finance for just a moment and let Wells Fargo advisors present the market analysis and investment performance report.
Well, thanks for having us. I always say when someone's late to one of our team meetings, better never than late. So I think it's really better late than never. So since I say that like a smart aleck, I think this is, kind of fitting this morning. Sorry, we got our wires crossed, but it's good to be here. And thanks for wanting to hear what we have to say. It's an exciting time of the year because it's the start of a new year and a new administration and a lot of anxiety, I think, around that. But also a new year brings new opportunities and we're always excited about that. Amy's going to go through the performance. Keep in mind the performance is through the end of November. So it's not the full year for 24. And the last month of the year was very difficult in the markets. December was a difficult month. So keep that in mind. But another positive report that we have this morning, and then we'll give you a brief outlook. And I did bring a couple, well, I say more than a couple, maybe 12 to 15 of our 2025 outlook pieces from Wells Fargo. So just in case any of y'all are interested for some New Year's reading. All right, Amy.
Some light reading for the new year. Well, good morning, y'all. So the performance, as was said, as of the end of November, as we discussed with the Finance Committee in December, the stock account that y'all have currently makes up about 34% of your entire portfolio. And the bond account makes up about 66%. So overall, it's a conservative allocation. The stock account through the end of November was up 13%. So good returns there. The bond account was up 4.28%. And that means the total portfolio as of the end of November was up 7.14. So as of that time, a good return. For comparisons through that time, through the end of November, the S&P 500 was up 28. The Dow was up 21, which sounds like huge numbers. But the more accurate comparison for you all is a blended stock index we use, and that was actually up 19.5. Now, the interesting thing about their performance is you've probably heard Wes talk before about the Magnificent Seven. A lot of their performance is concentrated in 7 stocks. So depending on how much of those you hold or whether or not you hold those, it really impacted portfolio performance overall. And then the U.S. aggregate bond index was up about 2.9%. So that's a comparison for your bond account being up 4.28. Any questions about that performance as of end of November? Yeah, then I can turn it over to Wes for the market outlook, which I think is what most folks are looking to hear.
Well, yeah, I would say we are optimistic about this year. I think what most people are thinking about is with the new administration, what does that bring with the inauguration right around the corner? We actually think that regardless about how you feel about them, when you look at the policies, there are some pros and there are some cons. And we ultimately think that the pros outweigh the cons. The pros being we would have less regulation, but also get an extension of tax cuts with the new Trump administration. That is very likely. He campaigned on those things. Very likely to see that. The cons are around the tariffs and immigration. Both of those can have the tendency to be inflationary. We think the pros outweigh the cons, which is why we have a pretty solid outlook for 2025. But that, there's a lot we don't know about about the way these things would be implemented. And we do think that the pros are going to take time for Trump to get a legislative victory in place and get everybody on the same page and his party to be able to extend tax cuts and for that to come to fruition. So in the meantime, we do know that tariffs would get implemented pretty quickly, which he's promised. And so that is going to be difficult on the markets. Tariffs, as y'all know, can be inflationary. And what we don't know is how much of it is he trying to just, use as a bargaining chip or to strike some sort of deal. So if they're mild tariffs, that would be a good thing. If they're strong tariffs, then that's going to be a negative for the markets. For that reason, we think that the first quarter or two of the year could be sort of difficult and choppy in the markets, but ultimately, the extension of tax cuts and less regulation is going to lead to higher growth in the markets over the upcoming year. Probably the biggest move that we think we've seen in the markets recently, where things sold off in December about 5%, and so far this year, is really due to the Federal Reserve meeting back in December, where they did cut rates, but in that rate cut, they also gave their guidance for 2025. And in that guidance, they reduced the number of rate cuts for 2025 from 4 cuts to two cuts. And so the market is grappling with that. The market always wants rate cuts because that's stimulative to the economy. It leads to more borrowing. And the message from the Federal Reserve is you're not going to get as many cuts as we originally thought. And that's because there is some inflation pressure and because economic growth has been relatively strong. So we can't cut rates. We need inflation to come down further. We can't cut rates as much as we had originally thought. So that's where we are. And I think between the Federal Reserve and their interest rate policy and the new administration, those are going to be the things to watch over the next several months. And we just don't know how it's going to play out, which is why we think there could be some volatility. There's even people who talk about that there could be a rate increase in 2025, which is kind of a shocker and a surprise. We don't think that's going to happen, but there is a possibility of something like that. So we need to see how things play out. Most likely we'll get a couple rate cuts, but not nearly as much as what the market was expecting. But also a pretty pro-growth agenda from the new administration if we can just get beyond the tariffs and immigration policy. So we feel that it's a time to be, you do want to be invested in the markets. Likely would be a positive year, but that, you still want to be in high quality stocks. And likely is going to be that a continuation of that shift in the markets where we've seen just a handful of stocks do really well for like the last year and a half to maybe the market broadening out more, where there's more sectors that participate outside of technology and artificial intelligence. So that's the way we were positioned. And I will pause there just to see if there's any questions. And of course, I'll leave. We got several copies of this outlook for 25.
Okay. Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I have 3 questions.
Okay.
All right. So number 1, relative to rates, you mentioned that the Fed said they were going to look at cutting rates only 2 times. Do you have any idea of how far those rates, like how significant the rate cuts would be and how that's going to impact the market? So.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Normally, when the Federal Reserve cuts rates, or raises rates, they're the normal move, and I'm saying normal. This is a quarter of a point. And so when they say 2 rate cuts, I believe I'm interpreting that as about a half a percentage point lower. So there would be 2 quarter of a point rate cuts that would lead to a half a percentage point lower. And all that, that's what the guidance that they've given in the middle of December, but obviously, that can change. They can cut or raise as much as they would like. Um, uh, on the high end, that would be, a half a percentage cut or 3/4 of a percentage cut. And occasionally we've seen them cut as much as 1%. But that's only happened a few times in my career.
Thank you. The second question is relative to your report. You mentioned that there were some market changes and just different things that affected or impacted us as a society in the last quarter of the year. When was your report printed or finished?
This,
one?
oh,
The outlook.
this Outlook report was printed in December. And, I don't think there's anything in here that has significantly changed. And one of the reasons why I say that, that's a great question, by the way. The reason I say that is Wells Fargo has always been on the side of where they did not think the Fed was going to cut rates as much when they started cutting rates as much as the market wanted them to. So at one point, there was a hope of 5 to 7 rate cuts over the course of their rate cutting, you know, uh, kind of session. But, we've always, when I say Wells has always felt like we were not going to get nearly that many cuts. So I think it's still
Relevant.
valid and relevant.
Okay, great, thank you. And my last question was just regarding the market, and we had a report that our level 1, level 2 assets were, or I think it was positioned like that, level 1, level 2, those assets were easier to come by in terms of what this is from our audit I'm speaking of.
Okay.
In terms of where the value comes from. I was thinking that a level 3 value asset was probably coming from crypto or some other type of investment. And so that is kind of related to my question around artificial intelligence. So there has been a lot of talk around the creation of Colossus and NVIDIA and all of the artificial intelligence companies coming together to use certain chips and all these different things that are impacting the investment market. My question is around what you're hearing about how the market is going to how the market is going to respond to the new administration coming in and creating some opportunities around artificial intelligence and investing in companies and those types of investments that are different, perhaps, or enhanced from some of the stable stocks and other things that you talked about. So what are you hearing about just the impact of artificial intelligence investing or companies that are basically, are we getting ready to see another tech boom around artificial intelligence and things like that?
That's a good question. I think we've seen a tremendous tech boom around artificial intelligence just in the last year and a half. Some of these artificial intelligence stocks are that really specialize and focus on artificial intelligence and like quantum computing and things like that. Are far off from being profitable, and there's speculation that they will not be profitable for 10, 15, 20 years. But then there are some larger companies today, like NVIDIA, that supply chips, but also supply chips that are used in artificial intelligence that are highly profitable today. And they're usually the larger, well-known companies that are a little more diversified, that aren't solely betting on artificial intelligence. They are profitable today. I think that, you know, those smaller companies are going to be highly volatile and, um, and probably are not appropriate for the board's investments in a major way. So we don't focus on them. I mean, obviously, we have a little bit of a pulse on them. What we are focusing on are and looking at are the ones that are profitable today that also have their hand in AI. And since those names have sold off some over the course of the last month and a half, some of them look a little cheaper. And so one of the things that we are looking at is, you know, if we get a little bit further sell off, are we going to rebalance some more into those profitable names today, but probably won't ever be in some of the more speculative stuff. As far as uh, you know, Bitcoin and things like that, I would say definitely there's a lot of talk with the new administration about being more friendly on those things, but we don't yet know where it's going to go. And so that's another thing that we'll just have to see how it plays out. But you know, now that Donald Trump has really changed his tune and is backing cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and things like that, you know, seems to be a push from the industry to get regulation and more acceptance and use out of cryptocurrencies in general.
I was going to say, if you're interested in AI, you may want to pick up a copy of this because the Institute addresses it specifically and a lot of what Wes touched on, but that and more. It was interesting for them to focus on something like that specifically in their outlook. So I think you might find that interesting. Have a copy of that.
Questions?
Wes, I've got a question. Over the last probably 12 to 18 months, I feel like there's been a cloud of recession, the R word. We've talked about it a lot and whether it would happen or not happen. What do you feel like, or what does Wells Fargo feel like that outlook is going forward over the next 12 to 24 months?
So yeah, yes, you are not imagining that. Wells Fargo was forecasting an economic slowdown, and that has never materialized over. It never materialized over the course of 2024. We might have slowed down ever so slightly, but not significantly. And Wells does not have a recession in the forecast for 2025. They are actually expecting economic growth to pick up throughout the year, mainly on the extension of tax cuts and less regulation. So, you know, there's always a risk of getting blindsided by something, but the base case, the base prediction is for there to be actually economic growth this year.
Any other questions? Well, thank y'all so much. Always very informative. Thank you.
Well,
for your
thank you.
time. Yes.
Thanks for having us. Hope y'all have a good rest of the meeting.
We can leave these, I think.
If you can leave those with Chandra, yes, with Chandra, and so board members, we can pick those up from Chandra. Thank you. Okay, so now we will move to agenda item M11, and I will recognize Dr. Anne Marie Milner to come forward and provide the first part of the education program activity.
Thank you, Madam Chair and the board members. It's nice to see you all. I am presenting today Care One Healthcare Training Institute, who would like initial approval on PN program. Care One Health Training Institute is a why can't I say that today? Pri- What is it? Proprietary. I'm like, why can't I say that? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Proprietary school, and the PN program has met the requirements of the North Carolina Community College Systems Office. They are also accredited by the Commission of Council on Occupational Education to award diplomas, certificates, and the school is in Raleigh. The Board of Nursing received an application from Ms. Deborah Purnell, who is the program director, who's sitting next to me, to establish a PN program in September of 2023. The proposed PN program requires a total of 50 credits, 17 non-nursing and 33 nursing credits to be completed across 3 semesters to include summer. The application demonstrated evidence of the proposed student population, projected student enrollment, financial resources, and learning resources to implement and maintain the program. An initial survey was conducted by myself and Dr. Lewis on November 21st, 2024, which led to several recommendations. It was recommended that no more than 30 students be enrolled in a single cohort due to limitations of lab space. It was also recommended that a larger space within the current facility be used to house the lab for the program, for the PN program. The maximum total enrollment is 60 students, 30 students in daytime option, and 30 students in the evening weekend option. The date of admission of first class would be June 2025. The first graduating class of the PN program would be June 2026. The current facilities are adequate to support the proposed PN program needs for both students and faculty. The proposed clinical agencies provided, proof of availability for utilization by the proposed program. And Ms. Purnell and Dr. Murthy May is here. Ms. Purnell is the director of the program, and Dr. Murthy is the chief administrator of Care One Health Training Institute. So the recommendation of the board staff is for that Care One Training Institute to be granted initial approval status for the practical nursing program with a maximum and total enrollment of 60 students to begin June 2025. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Milner. Are there any questions from the board, from board members? So I have a few. Ms. Parnell, thank you, and thank you as well for coming before us today. I would like, if you could please, provide some explanation as to why there were multiple submissions for the approval of the PN program at your institution.
Well, we reviewed what was sent back as recommendations by Dr. Milner and went back and revised those and then went forward what was mentioned that needed to be looked at.
Okay, thank you. For your clinical hours, how many clinical hours will a graduate have upon completion of your program?
The clinical hours per week is 9 hours per week. And then they will have, as far as for each of the semesters, I'm not exactly sure of the exact hours, but it's what's required as far as the class hours versus the clinical hours. And we do have we have a number of clinical sites that are available by splitting the 60 students into 2 groups, having one going in the daytime and one going in the evening weekend. Then the clinical sites that may be used by other facilities there's not as much of a conflict. So we're able to accommodate the clinical hours for our students in that way. And we have a sufficient number of different areas in the clinical hospitals, assisted living, nursing homes, Department of Safety, and that will accommodate them.
And so with that, the preceptorship, the component that's required by the board, how many hours do you anticipate your graduates will have?
As far as the precepting,
Yes.
well, I would think that that would be within the, after the initial semesters, then the precepting, it would be, they would be assigned to an actual nurse in that facility that they're being assigned to as far as the clinical setting. So it would be the 9 hours of clinical per week, and it would go through that semester, that last semester. And as there would be one person, either myself or one of the faculty, be assigned as the clinical preceptor that would go and evaluate according to what their person that they've been assigned to recommends is, and how they're doing it. And so they're evaluated on that.
You already have faculty in place for the PN program?
We have 5 faculty that work, and they all have their masters, their MSN. They, so we do have enough for the teaching based on having the day and the evening program.
How many other programs do you have at your institution?
We have the CNA1, CNA2, we have phlebotomy, we have medical assisting, we have, what else is beside that? There's like 5 programs. Yeah, the EKG and phlebotomy. So, but those programs are during the day, so that's why we have we kind of have been able to adjust the lab space between the different groups so that there's not a conflict with the lab. When the CNA groups and the other programs, it would be rotated throughout so that they're not going to conflict with the lab. So that's why we have been able to work it out to have this program utilize the labs when the other groups would be in the class setting.
So for clarity, you're asking for 30 students for your proposed PM program during the day, and then the other programs that you mentioned will also be there during the day.
They would be, when it's like that, yes, when it's like that, one group would be in the class, the other group would have their lab time set up for that, the other programs, and then it would be vice versa when the PM program would need to utilize the lab.
Does the other programs also, will you have those during the weekend and evening as well?
No, they have just the
Yeah, so we have,
the green.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So we have a total of 5 labs right now. So we have 1 lab that is dedicated for the PN program, and we have 2 labs for CNA1. We have 1 lab for CNA2, and we have another lab for the phlebotomy.
And so how many labs would you, or do you have for the PN program?
We have 1, but if they need other skills, like if they need to be comped for like any one skills, they can utilize the other labs, so they will not be in conflict. So our CNA program right now, we have it during the day, evening, weekend. So at any given time, we just have minimal number of students on campus.
How many classrooms? Yes. How many classrooms do you have?
We have one classroom that has an occupancy of 49.
So one
Persons.
classroom for all programs.
No, we have three classrooms.
3 classrooms.
4 classrooms, including the PN program. 3 classrooms for the other programs, including the PN, 4 classrooms and 5 labs.
You are the, I'm sorry,
The chief administrator.
chief administrator, but you're the program director.
For the PM program.
Ms. Layden, Diane, question? So I am not PN. Dr. Kistler, are you able to answer?
I can answer
Okay.
Common Course Library for the North Carolina. The Common Course Library for the community college system identifies like the number of hours per course. And so it defines that the clinical hours for like nursing 101 would be 6, and then the subsequent ones would be 9 and 9. For those particular courses, depending on how they laid them out, would be how many hours they would allocate per week for those students. Our PN instructors may have a different clarification on the specific way they run their program.
Dr. Steele?
Hi, thank you for coming today. My question is around the staff support, so the support staff. So can you just run through the brief structure of your school and how many people work in different levels? So you mentioned, Ms. Parnell, that you are the director of the PN program.
Yes.
And Dr., may you pronounce your name, please? Marithia May? Okay, Dr. Marithia May, you mentioned that you are the Chief Administrative Officer for the entire institution, or, okay, so if you could just run through your, I'm trying to get to the support staff to be able to know who is going to be able to support the students when they're going out for clinicals with the administrative piece. And I know our staff has done a great job of learning this information. However, I can't see it. So if you could just highlight that, how does your order of structure work?
Okay, that's a good question. So I'm the chief administrator. We have a program director for the rest of the other programs. That's a separate program director. And now we have now who is the program director for the PN program. We do have 5 faculty members, more than 5, but 5 who are willing to transition to the PN program. All those 5 members are mastered prepared. 4 of them have their MSN. 1 of them have their DMP, and have someone else who has their master's, but it's MPH. We have a registrar, we have a receptionist, we have IT department, so we have someone who takes care of the IT. We have other staff, but not necessarily who are going to be teaching directly on the PN program. Like we have a phlebotomy instructor, she's a nurse. So if there is any piece that need to be reinforced, then she is more than willing to do that. But she's not among the 5, so that will be an additional 6 instructors as of now. And those are the ones who are on campus. If we get approved, then of course we're gonna be hiring more faculty members as needed. So we have the
Administrative officer
so we have the board of trustee.
over you,
Yes,
and
and
then you oversee.
yes, but we also have the advisory board, which is, so we have the board of trustee and then the advisory board. And the advisory board, everybody who is on that board, they are nurses. But the board of trustee, we have 1 nurse. She has her DMP. We have another professor who teaches on one of the local colleges. And we have 2 other board members who are business entrepreneurs.
Okay, so just to be clear, There is a board of directors for Care One.
Yes.
There's an advisory board under the board of directors. And then the advisory board and the board of directors hires you,
Yes.
and you are the chief administrative officer and for all intents and purposes, the CEO of the entire school.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, got it. And then under you are all of the program directors, including Ms. Parnell. And Ms. Parnell's name is associated with the applications that have been coming before the board for the last 5 years, 6 years, since 2019?
No.
Well, no,
Not
she-
quite, okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
she's just
She's the
associated with
last couple years,
2022
yeah.
and 2024's application, those two.
2023 and 2024.
Excuse me, thank you. 23 and 24's applications.
yes.
Okay, so prior to that, that was under the leadership of someone else who submitted the
Yes.
application, but under your leadership.
Yes.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
And so now we are looking at the program with the 5 faculty, et cetera. All of that is just the current, those are the current faculty members that encompass or teach the current set of programs.
Yes.
And then you're going to hire new faculty to teach the PN program if approved.
Yes.
And then you have a registrar, an IT department, maybe that's outsourced or internal, but a registrar, IT department, a receptionist, and I believe that's all you mentioned for support staff.
They also have financial aid and financial aid person. They also have mental health support for the students.
Perfect. Okay, got it. Okay, I just wanted to understand the
Yes.
structure. Thank you. I yield to the chair.
Okay, just a few more questions. And so it's just concerning for me as a nurse educator. The application for the PN program has been coming since 2019 with numerous deficiencies. And so I'm just wondering if either of you, I hear now that you were not there during that time, but can you, ma'am, speak to that?
Yeah, so we had a different program director at that time, and it got a point whereby we needed to look for another program director. So the recommendations that had been sent, we waited until we got another program director to resubmit their application. So that kind of caused some sort of a delay. But then when Ms. Pannell came on board, we were able now to start submitting those applications. Now, we did submit the application late last year, but we were also waiting for the new board recommendations. So that did put that on hold as well.
So even with that, thank you for that response. Since Ms. Parnell has been in position, there continued to be deficiencies. Any
Well,
rationale?
we applied the revisions that we had, and then we found out when there were some rules that had been updated. So we had to go back and change what we had originally put since with those rules that were updated by the Board of Nursing, revised, I guess. And that was a it was a change that we had not anticipated.
And I'm also concerned, Ms. Parnell, because when I asked you a question about the preceptorship, the requirement, I don't know, I don't think that the answer that you provided is accurate. And my last question is, do you now have running water in your lab?
So 2 of the labs have running water, and the other lab, we're just waiting for the permits from the city. So there's some work that still need to be done so that all the labs, but 2 of the labs do have running water.
Okay, any other questions, board members? Is there a motion? Yes. It has been, Dr. Steele has moved that we table the discussion. Any further comments? Okay, the motion has been seconded by Diane Layden. All in favor? Any discussion? I apologize. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? of tabling? The vote is unanimous and it will be tabled. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, board members. Dr. Crystal Tillman.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to recognize Dr. Jennifer Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, I'll present a summary report from Meredith College for your consideration of initial approval status. Meredith College is a private women's liberal arts college and coeducational graduate school located in Raleigh, North Carolina. The Board of Nursing received an application from Dr. Michelle Hartman, Program Director with Meredith, to establish a BSN program in September 2024. The proposed BSN program requires a total of 125 credits with 62 non-nursing and 63 nursing credit hours to be completed across 8 semesters, which includes 1 summer session. The maximum total enrollment requested is 100 students. The proposed date for admission of the first class is January 2026, and the first graduating cohort is anticipated to occur May 2029. The proposed program will be physically located at Meredith College in Raleigh, North Carolina. The application demonstrates evidence of the proposed student population, projected student enrollment, financial resources, and learning resources to implement and maintain the program. You'll note in the summary report that at the time of the application, Meredith College lacked physical facilities dedicated to nursing labs, simulation spaces, and debriefing spaces on its current campus. Meredith College has entered into a memorandum of understanding with Johnston Community College to provide the simulation, debriefing spaces, and lab spaces for the proposed BSN program beginning August 2027. When students are expected to need those resources. The memorandum of understanding between the 2 institutions clearly outlines the expectations of each institution and limits adverse impacts to currently approved programs offered by Johnston Community College. Based on the MOU and survey of both institutions, the current facilities are adequate to support the proposed BSN program needs for both students and faculty. Proposed clinical agencies provided proof of availability for utilization, and an initial survey visit was conducted November 22nd, 2024, with no recommendations resulting from that visit. Dr. Hartman is available today should you have questions for her or the application. She's also accompanied by Dr. Mary Johnson, Director of Health Services, and Dr. Matthew Polonsny, Meredith College's former Senior Vice President and Provost, and a strong advocate of the program. The recommendation of board staff is that Meredith College be granted initial approval status for a Bachelor of Science in Nursing program with a maximum total enrollment of 100 students to begin January 2026. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Board members, questions? Yes, Dr. Steele?
Okay, hey, good morning. Thanks for being here. My question is around the facilities. So it states in your memorandum of understanding that you're not going to be using the current facilities, that you're going to be constructing new facilities on the campus of Johnston Community College. So 2 questions. Number 1.
Can you clarify your question?
Not new facilities at Johnston. So they will construct facilities at Meredith College. The MOU is with Johnston Community College.
Okay,
For
excuse me, it
use
does
of
say
their
Meredith College
established-
plans to construct new facilities on
Yes.
its main campus
Yes.
in Raleigh to house the necessary physical spaces. Okay, so let me go back to what I read in general. It says Johnston Community College facilities are adequate to support the program needs for Meredith College per the stipulations as set forth in the MOU. Per the approved program director, it is not the intent of Meredith College to utilize the facilities offered by Johnston Community College. Rather, Meredith plans to construct new facilities. So maybe can we clarify what that means?
Sure.
It's not the
Okay.
intent to use, but it is the intent to use.
That's a great question. Thanks so much. So our timeline in our curriculum is that our skills lab and simulation spaces will not be needed until fall of 2027. So that gives us 2 years. We are currently engaged with an architect and designing a building on campus that would include simulation and lab spaces that is scheduled to be completed by then. Our organization prioritized Board of Nursing approval as a strong statement before we began enrolling students and seeking funding resources for scholarships and things like that. And so we're grateful for the partnership with Johnston Community College so that it allowed not only for our education consultant to go and assess that we do have adequate resources in place, but it also gives us a backup plan because I am a firm believer through COVID and everything else, right? You need a plan B.
So you'll use the facilities at Johnston if and only if your facilities are not finished and permitted and you have a CO by fall of 2027.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, now I understand. And so regarding your new facilities, that is, 2 years, 2.5 years. Can you talk a little bit just about you mentioned you engaged an architect. Obviously, architect, engineering, the city, the permitting process, et cetera, are all a part of that. So can you just speak to your, availability of financial resources, your contractor, just your whole process in terms of what planning have you all put in place to be ready to have a CO in 2.5 years?
Sure. So it is an ongoing process. We started this discussion with architects in the summer and met consistently with them through the fall and are scheduling our spring meetings as well. So we have draft blueprints and we've even had meetings with them, which is Mary and I's favorite part about like boxes and where they go. And so we have a design that includes an auditorium and 2 classrooms, as well as simulation spaces and a health assessment lab and a skills lab. And so our goal is to proceed with that planning. We meet in the coming weeks with our Vice President of Finance to talk about the continued efforts to raise money. So we have generous gifts to get us started. But our institutional advancement department is super excited to get started in fundraising and to develop a plan to support the new building.
Okay, and I assume there's a relationship with the city of Raleigh to ensure permitting goes
Yes,
smooth.
our architects have that on the timeline and have already had, it's our understanding they've already had a preliminary like planning meeting with them.
Perfect, because you can have all of the money
Yes.
and not have the city's approval, and that will
Right.
stop you cold in your tracks. But Johnston is your backup plan
Yes, ma'am.
for this program. Okay, that's my only question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. The second question was, how far are the facilities at Johnston or the college? How far are the 2 institutions apart?
They're about 45 minutes. And so we have a plan for transportation so that we will be providing transportation
Okay.
to the students and the CIs.
Okay, thank you.
And that was one of my questions as well. You also mentioned in the blueprint that you have 2 classrooms. You will have 2 classrooms. How many students will each classroom seat?
Our plan is that each classroom would seat up to 50. And then the auditorium would be over twice that much.
Okay. And across 8 semesters, but you're starting January 2026, and the students will graduate in 2029. Something's missing.
So our they will be admitted into the program while they are still completing a year's worth of their science-based courses. And then in fall of 2027 is when they would begin the nursing curriculum portion of the program.
Is there a summer component?
They're in one summer, between their junior and senior year, there's a hybrid community health course.
And so if all works as it's supposed to, again, you won't need Johnston, but in the case that the architect, it snows, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You have a plan.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions, board members? Okay. Is there a motion? Yes.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the approved status where college, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Layden. It has been moved by Diane Layton to accept the recommendation. Is there a second? Okay, it's seconded by Dr. Kistler. I will now call for a vote. All in favor by show of hands? And it's unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Can I just take a moment to express my gratitude for our educational consultant? I've worked with many here, and they are just all wonderful professionals to work with. So thank you so much.
Okay, we will continue with Dr. Lewis.
Absolutely. If North Carolina Wesleyan. Wonderful. All right. So now I will present a summary report for North Carolina Wesleyan University for your consideration of initial approval status. North Carolina Wesleyan University is a private Methodist affiliated liberal arts institution located in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. The institution submitted an application to establish a BSN program in August of 2024. The proposed four-semester program will require 120 total credit hours, 65 of which are non-nursing credit hours and 55 are nursing credit hours. North Carolina Wesleyan University proposes admitting a maximum of 70 students in August 2025, with the first graduating class anticipated in May 2027. The program will be physically located on the campus of North Carolina Wesleyan University in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. The application and subsequent site visit conducted November 21st, 2024 affirmed that the institution has sufficient learning, financial, and human resources, as well as adequate support services and physical facilities to initiate and sustain the program. Proposed clinical agencies provided proof of availability for utilization by the proposed program. There were no recommendations resulting from the on-site survey. More detail regarding the program application is available in the consultant summary report, and the program director, Dr. Leslie McGraw, along with Dr. Crystal Ostium, Director of Nursing Programs and Initiatives, are available today should you have questions for them. They are also accompanied by Dr. Evan Duff, President of North Carolina Wesleyan University, Dr. Joseph Lane, Provost for the institution, and Dr. Jones Hooker, faculty member.
Thank you.
The recommendation of board staff is that North Carolina Wesleyan University be granted initial approval for a Bachelor of Science in Nursing program with an approval for a maximum total enrollment of 70 students to begin August 2025. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Are there questions, discussion, board members? Okay, my question, so currently you have 2 full-time faculty and you are planning to hire 10, is that correct?
Well, we've hired Dr. Jones Hooker, and then we also have hired Dr. Consuela Blazes. They both are slated to start February the 1st. Then we plan on hiring 2 more faculty members in the 2025-2026 year. We also have a part-time simulation person that is on contract with us as well, that hopefully we can convince to come full-time as well.
So I understand how difficult it can be to hire faculty. Also, you're planning to admit your first class August of 2025. So do you have students, like, is there a pipeline that you're planning to pull from?
There is a pipeline. As you can imagine, there's some chatter in our community already. We have an RN to BSN program that is successful. And so there is some chatter amongst our community about a new BSN program. So once we get the approval, we do have a pipeline of students that we can reach out to as soon as we are allowed to.
Other questions, board members? Is there a motion? Dr. Steele?
Madam Chair, I move to extend an acceptance of this program into the, yes, that.
So Dr. Steele has moved to approve staff's recommendation. Is there a second? Okay, Dr. Kistler has second. I will now call for the vote. All in favor by show of hands. And the motion carries. Thank you. Yes. Okay, I apologize for that. One abstention. Yes, Diane Layton has abstained. Okay, thank you. Congratulations. Okay, at this time, Dr. Lewis, board members, we will take a 10-minute break and then we will resume. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'll now present South College for your consideration of program approval. South College is a private college with locations across multiple states, including in Asheville, North Carolina. The institution submitted an application to establish an Associate of Science in Nursing program in September 2023. The proposed 7-quarter program will require 108.5 total credit hours, 51.5 of which are non-nursing credit hours and 57 nursing credit hours. South College proposes admitting a maximum of 120 students beginning in June 2025, with the first graduating class anticipated June 2026. The program will be physically located on the campus of South College in Asheville, North Carolina. The application and subsequent site visit conducted October 31st, 2023, affirmed that the institution has sufficient learning, financial, and human resources, as well as adequate support services and physical facilities to initiate and sustain the program. Proposed clinical agencies provided proof of availability for utilization by the program, and there were no recommendations resulting from the on-site survey. More detail regarding the program application is available in the consultant summary report, including the status of all other programs currently in operation at that campus. And I'd like to publicly acknowledge that South College's BSN and PN programs are in full compliance with board regulations. The program director, Dr. Katie Thomas, Associate Dean of Nursing for the Asheville campus, is available today should you have questions, and she is accompanied by Dr. Danielle Kwasnick, Asheville campus president, as well as Dr. Samantha Searcy, Dean of Academics and Student Services. The recommendation of board staff is that South College be granted initial approval for an Associate of Science in Nursing program with an approval for a maximum total enrollment of 120 students beginning June 2025. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Are there questions, board members, discussion? Okay, I have a few. Quarters. How long are your quarters?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our quarters are 10 weeks of instruction with an 11th week of finals.
Thanks. And so the proposed ASN or associate degree program is 108.5 total credits. How many total credits is your BSN program?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually don't know that off the top of my head. The BSN program is 6 quarters of nursing instruction and an additional 6 quarters generally of prerequisite coursework. So a total generally of 3 years. 180, thank you, Dr. Kwasnick. 180 credits for the BSN.
Okay, so 108.5 for the proposed associate, and then 180 credits for the BSN program. That's a lot. How many students do you have enrolled in your BSN program?
We currently have 45 students enrolled in the BSN program.
45?
45.
Okay, and how many are in your PN program?
50.
Okay, and so for your BSN program, you have approval for 180, and you said you have 45?
Yes, ma'am.
And then the PN, you have approval for 120, and you have how many again?
50.
50. And so now the associate degree program, any rationale as to the 3? Why the now associates?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we have seen being a multi-site school is a tremendous request for the associate degree track. We've seen over 200% growth in that track specifically on our other campuses. And we've also seen in the Asheville market that that is a popular track with students as well. And so we want to be able to meet the needs of our community and the needs of of potential students by offering all of the potential tracks that they might wish to choose for their career growth. We also have seen a lot of requests for bridge type programs, and we do offer at South College an RN to BSN program that's offered through our online programming.
So is your BSN program or your PN program online, hybrid, brick and mortar?
Yes, so the PN program is on ground. The BSN program we offer in both modalities. So we have an on-ground BSN, and we were recently approved for a hybrid option of the BSN program as well. So students are able to self-select which program works for them. And that allows us to expand our geographical market to, again, meet the needs of the community and potential students.
When you say approved, you were approved by, are you, us?
By the board, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so just wondering, do you have, are any of your programs accredited, nationally accredited?
Yes, our BSN program is nationally accredited by CCNE. And we are seeking accreditation. We're in initial candidacy for ACEN accreditation for the PN program.
And just curious, during that accreditation process, do they question the 180 hours for your BSN program?
No, ma'am.
My last question, for the different programs, will you have, or do you currently have different directors?
Yes, both the BSN and the PM program have program coordinators that are employed already in place, and we would seek to hire an ASN program coordinator pending approval.
Yes, Diane?
I'm just trying to figure out right here where you say that the first class starts June 25 and the graduation is June 26. Do you have the students go ahead and take all their sciences and all that stuff before? And is this year just total nursing, or what is, I mean, that's a lot to put into a year.
Yes, so the program is in total 7 quarters, and the first 3 are considered at a provisional status as they're admitted. So they are taking most of their science prerequisite courses. In the 3rd quarter, they apply into a cohort for nursing, and that is when the core nursing with lab and clinical hours would start. So the majority of their science-based prereqs are done prior to any nursing core. There are a few prerequisite type courses that do continue through the 7 quarters, but the bulk are done before starting nursing.
Yes, Dr. Shaw?
Yes, just for clarification for the public, I know we use the terms ADN and ASN. Can you, or maybe someone from our education staff or board, kind of explain to the public why we use those terms, or are they used interchangeably?
They're often used interchangeably. There are some minor distinctions, but the end degree is similarly appointed. The associate in science tends to focus a little bit heavier on those science prerequisite coursework as requirements, but for general purposes, you can establish almost an equivalency between the two.
And so I know I said I was through with questions, but I do have a few more. With your BSN program, remind us how long it's been in operation.
The BSN program has been in operation since 2019.
Okay, and the PN?
The PN is since 2023.
Okay, and so I guess this is more of a statement, you know, with you having the approval for the 180 in your BSN and the 120 in your PN, and again, you have 45 and then 50, and now this ASN. Now the question, do you see or do you foresee the programs competing with each other? Because again, you have like over 400 seats.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you have low enrollment currently.
That's a great question. I
can't foretell the future, but in our other sites that do have all of these program options, we didn't see that. The BSN enrollment held steady, and the ASN enrollment increased, as I had mentioned. That was primarily from new admissions and new recruits, but we did not see a dramatic drop off in BSN enrollment in any other site.
And I will say congratulations to you regarding the 100% NCLEX pass rates for both programs.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay, is there a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just have some concern over, you've already, I know with an associate's degree, people want to come and take it and get out and work. I just have some concern about how many seats in the BSN you already have and aren't filling. So I'm just expressing that as a concern as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Diane. Okay. Is there a motion? Dr. Steele?
Madam Chair, I move that we move this program into approval status.
Okay. Dr. Steele has moved to approve the staff's recommendation for initial approval for the program. Is there a second? So Karen York. So Karen York has seconded. I'm not ignoring you, left side. Okay. I will now call for any further discussion. I will now call for a vote. All in favor by show of hands. And let me make sure that I'm looking at, okay. And the vote is unanimous. Congratulations. And we will continue with Dr. Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'll now present a summary report for Western Piedmont Community College for your consideration of initial approval status. I do know that you all should have an updated summary report provided to you, so my verbal communication will be reflective of the most accurate information, okay? Western Piedmont Community College is a public community college belonging to the North Carolina Community College System. It's located in Morganton, North Carolina. Michelle Bobo, Program Director for the institution, submitted an application to establish a practical nursing program and a practical nursing to associate degree in nursing program entry option in October 2024. The proposed practical nursing program requires 44 total credits, 14 non-nursing credits, and 30 nursing credit hours to be completed across 3 semesters. The application requested to expand their currently established associate degree in nursing program by 20 seats to accommodate entrance into the PN to ADN entry option. The new maximum enrollment requested for the ADN program is 145. The date of admission to the first class of PN students is August 2025. PN students are anticipated to graduate in early summer 2026. The PN to ADN entry option will enroll students beginning summer 2027, with students anticipated to graduate in May 2028 alongside those traditional ADN students. The PN program will be physically located on the off-campus instructional site known as Foothills Higher Education Center in Morganton, North Carolina. The application and subsequent site visit conducted November 26, 2024, affirmed that the institution has sufficient learning, financial, and human resources, as well as adequate support services and physical facilities to initiate and sustain the program. Proposed clinical agencies provided proof of availability for utilization by the program. There were no recommendations resulting from the on-site survey. Again, more detail regarding the program application is available in the consultant summary report and Program Director Michelle Bobo should be available via Teams should you have any questions for her or the application. The recommendation of board staff is that Western Piedmont Community College be granted initial approval for a practical nursing program with an approval for a maximum total enrollment of 40 students to begin August 2025, and the practical nursing to associate degree program entry option with a maximum enrollment of 145 students for their existing associate degree in nursing program to begin August 2026. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, and hi, Ms. Bobo. Good
morning.
Any questions, board members? My question, Ms. Bobo, so for your PN program, for the preceptorship that's required, how many hours will your students obtain upon completion of the required preceptorship?
They will have a total of 120 hours for that preceptorship.
Okay, and this might be a Dr. Lewis question. Dr. Lewis, so we have the program type and the entry option. Can you just, for the board and those watching, provide the clarity in terms of what is being requested?
Absolutely. So there are 4 different program types approved in North Carolina. That's the BSN, so the Bachelor of Science, the Associate Degree in Nursing, the Practical Nursing Diploma, and the recently added Direct Master's Entry program type. These are the 4 different types of programs that you all will see in North Carolina, and that you all are asked to approve in North Carolina. What Western Piedmont has asked to do is to also approve, in addition to a practical nursing program, to also approve a bridge option, a PN to ADN tract. And so institutions are allowed to apply for a program type and an entry option at the same time, and that's what's happening here. Essentially, that bridge program is gaining or allowing students to access a different pathway to an existing program type. Okay, in this case, it's the associate degree. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. And then another, just a statement, well, it's a question for you, Dr. Lewis, just for the board's information. I've asked the question to a few educators about the preceptorship hours for a PN program versus a BSN or an ASN or an ADN.
Yes.
Can you just share what those requirements are?
Yes. So for the PN program, students are required to complete a focused client care experience. That's their preceptorship. That's typically done in a one-on-one capacity with an experienced nurse. For the PN program, the minimum number of hours is 90. You can certainly go beyond that, but the minimum number is 90 hours per student. For those programs, including the associate degree as well as the BSM and even in the DME as well, the minimum number of hours for those types of programs leading to an RN designation is 120 hours. Again, you can go beyond that, but the minimum number is 120 hours.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Thank you, Ms. Bobo, for answering my question. Any further discussion or questions? Yes.
I just have a question about the recommendation with your PN students.
Is your mic on, Karen?
I'm sorry. Yes. With the PN students, if both programs are approved, your PN program, they would start in 2025, August. When would they finish, or would they be expected to finish prior to the spring of 2027 to facilitate those 40 possibly going over to your numbers? Is that what we're looking at?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. So yes, our PN students will start in the fall of 25, and that's 3 semesters. So they'll go fall, spring, summer, and finish in the summer of 26. And that allows them time to take their NCLEX, become licensed, and then start their PN bridge course into the ADN program then. Yes.
Karen, any other questions, discussion? Is there a motion? Okay, the motion has been moved by Dr. LaDonna Thomas. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Andrea Jepson. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor by show of hands? All hands, so it is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bobo.
Thank you.
Congratulations. All right, and Dr. Lewis, I believe we have yet another.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
If, Western Carolina, perfect. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, I shared positive feedback from our Western North Carolina academic institutions earlier in the meeting, showcasing the board's ability to extend grace when unforeseen and unprecedented events warrant it. And I consider this next agenda item an extension of that effort. Western Carolina University BSN program was slated to have their 10-year survey conducted on October 17, 2024, as required by General Statute 90-171.40 and 21 NCAC 36.0303C1. The devastation left in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene made it impossible to move forward with that survey. And despite relentless efforts on the part of the program director, Dr. Terry Durbin, who is seated here, who on several occasions tried to provide the information, there is an acknowledgement that sheer lack of infrastructure and the ability to communicate for an extended period of time hampered the program's ability to fully demonstrate compliance. It is therefore recommended that Western Carolina University BSN program is granted a 3-month extension to submit evidence of compliance with established rule language as determined by consultant review to be completed no later than April 23rd, 2025. During this timeframe, Western Carolina would remain on full approval status as they currently are, with an update provided to the board at the May 2025 meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Questions? Discussion? Yes, Dr. Steele?
So thank you for being here today. I do recognize, and I think we all do, that there was just utter devastation experienced in Western North Carolina as a result of Hurricane Helene. So our apologies and our deepest thoughts are with you and your community. My only question is, can you provide just an overview of some of the things that you all have been experiencing that obviously have prevented this, but just different things that maybe we are not aware of because you are boots on the ground in terms of what's occurring in Western North Carolina?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you for asking. I've been through hurricanes before in Florida. I lived in Florida for a time, and so I thought I knew what to expect. First of all, I never expected a hurricane in Appalachia, but I thought I knew what to expect, and the infrastructure was old and poor in Western North Carolina already, and so the winds and the flooding were devastating. People had literally minutes to get out of their houses, and some of them didn't make it. Several of our faculty, staff, and students lost family members, either immediately on the day of the hurricane or in the aftermath from health problems. One of our faculty members' husbands had a heart attack immediately after. So bridges were washed away, roads were washed away. The I-40 is completely collapsed between Western North Carolina and Tennessee, and you can't travel on it. So that has made Knoxville was the biggest city near us outside of Asheville, so we relied heavily on Knoxville for some of the things that we use. So we can't do that now. So deliveries now are delayed probably about a week, which is better than it was. Many of our faculty, staff, and students didn't have running water until after Thanksgiving. We had people coming to the building to shower because we actually had not drinkable water at the Cullowhee building, but water that you could shower in. We didn't have drinkable water or water that was safe to shower in at the Asheville building until after Thanksgiving. Communication was, the first 2 weeks, we could hardly communicate with anybody at all. Internet was down, phone lines were down. There was nobody knew what was going on. So trying to connect with everybody and make sure that everybody was okay. For 3 months, it felt like I had my phone at my side, even though it wouldn't really work very well, just in case somebody called and somebody needed something. Although we were struggling, there were lots of people in the community that are struggling more. They're still struggling. They're living in tents, and it has been as low as 8 degrees at home. The bridges that were built to replace the infrastructure that was lost were made of wood, and then we had some, what we would consider minor flooding, but it washed those bridges back out. People are very, very traumatized. So anytime anything weather related comes up, you can just see it. And so, how do you move forward from that? I've been a faculty member in some form or fashion since 2010, and last semester was the first semester where I honestly thought, okay, maybe I am indeed not cut out for that. Maybe I need to stop. And then I thought, what does that say about any of my convictions if I turn my back on this now? What does that say to my students, who I tell all the time that nurses are the people who walk toward the storm? If I step back, I can't do it. So here I am. We're picking up the pieces. We are so grateful for the grace and the kindness extended by the Board of Nursing and the Board of Nursing staff. Dr. Terry Ward needs a medal. I'm not even kidding. I probably leaned on her more heavily than I should have, and I'm really, really grateful for her kindness and her support. I can't say enough good things about that. If there's some sort of award I could nominate her for, I would like to, please let me know, because I would like to do it. She has been amazing to work with. So still, some roads are impassable, bridges are impassable. People are living in tents using propane heaters or wood stoves in tents. That's a thing. I didn't know that was a thing, but it is. Wood stoves in tents to heat themselves. We had 6 inches of snow the other day. Some roads are still ice covered, so schools are out. I think they actually went back on a normal schedule today, but with the caveat that buses aren't going to be allowed on the icy roads. So we've got folks with homeless living in tents with snow, more cold weather coming next week. It's indescribable. If you have ever been to Asheville, to the lovely River Arts District, it's completely gone. If you've ever been to the Biltmore House, the house itself is fine because it was built up on a hill, but the grounds and a lot of the surrounding businesses were completely destroyed. I've never seen anything like it. And I lived through Hurricane Charlie in Florida in 2004. And this is on another level. Does that answer kind of? Yeah, thank you.
Any other discussion, comments? Yes, Diane? Yes.
I would like to move that we accept and of the committee, board, or whatever. Anyway, we grant them the extension.
Thank you. A motion has been moved to approve the staff's recommendation by Diane Layden. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Sandra Lewis. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will now call for the vote. All in favor by show of hands. It is unanimous. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate the support.
All right. Well, Dr. Lewis, thank you. And I will now recognize Dr. Sarah Griffith to provide information about the Education and Practice Committee charge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, initially we were considering proposing a education and practice charge related to artificial intelligence or AI. And we had a great presentation last year from Rich Kinney. However, it's come to our attention that we need to focus on medication aid rules and work through that process. We have a periodic review for all of our rules coming up, and we felt logistically it was easier to get those rules handled before that periodic review process started. So the medication aid regulations were last reviewed about 15 years ago, and much has changed in healthcare over those years. This charge, if approved, will be led by Stacy Thompson, one of our practice consultants, and Joyce Winstead, our director of practice, will be mentoring Stacy through this process. So the recommendation is to charge the Education and Practice Committee to be educated on the laws applicable to medication aids, review the administrative codes, and explore best practices related to the medication aid role. This may include recommendations to revisions to the rules to the full board. Madam Chair.
Thank you. The motion has been moved by Dr. Shaw to approve the staff's recommendation. Is there a second? Dr. Kistler has seconded. Further discussion? If not, I will call for the vote. All in favor by show of hands, and it is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. We will now, or I will now, recognize Angela Ellis to come forward and present information about our administrative code rules.
Thank you. And we always put rules at the end of the day, so they're a dry topic. So I wanted to provide an update on the petition for rulemaking regarding determination and pronouncement of death. This was a rule that the board approved back in May of 2024 and directed staff to proceed with rulemaking. We did proceed with that and submitted the rule for the Office of Administrative Hearing to review. We were assigned a staff attorney from the Rules Review Commission. Following a response from that attorney, Ms. Paris, our Chief Legal Officer, and the North Carolina Medical Board discussed pulling the rule for submission at this time. This was communicated with the individuals who submitted this petition with Duke, who filed the original petition with us. So right now that rule has been pulled from consideration and may or may not come back to you at a later time.
So Angela, are there specific reasons why it was pulled?
The attorneys at Rules Review Commission felt it needed more substance in terms of what the Nurse Practice Act allows. I'm not at liberty to share more information.
Yes, okay.
Apologies.
But excellent response. Questions, discussion? All right, is there a motion?
No motion.
Oh, no motion is
Just a
needed. Well, I'm
apology.
just so used to making a motion. And so you have something else, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so
Yes.
continue,
Okay.
please.
So you'll notice that you have rules in your packet for 21 NCAC 36.0211 licensure by examination and .0218 licensure by endorsement. The board approved these rules in September of 2024. Both rules and directed staff to proceed with rulemaking. We filed the notice of text with the Office of Administrative Hearings on October 18th, and the interested parties were notified by email, posts, our website, etc. A public hearing was held on December 12th, 2024, and no comments were received there. The comment for both of these rules ended on January 14th, and we did not receive any comments during the comment period. So at this time, staff is recommending that the board approve proposed amendments to 21 NCAC 36.0211 licensure by examination and .0218 licensure by endorsement, and direct staff to proceed with rulemaking.
So with these, Angela, are we going to like approve them or not, but together as you presented or
If you would like,
separate?
or separate, whichever you prefer.
Okay, so let's do 21 NCAC 36.0211 licensure by examination. And so that staff recommendation is that the board approve amendments to 21 NCAC 36.0211 licensure by examination and direct staff to proceed with rulemaking. Is there a motion? Yes.
Is it possible to consider approving them both together?
There's no reason why we can't. I
Okay.
just separated them, just.
So I move that we approve proposed amendments to 21 NCAC 36.0211 licensure by examination and .0218 licensure by endorsement, and direct staff to proceed with rulemaking.
Okay, so Dr. Steele has moved to approve both recommendations for .211 or .0211 and .0218. Is there a second? Okay, seconded by Dr. Kistler. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor by show of hands, and it is unanimous and it carries. Thank you, Angela. All righty, do I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss legal matters? All righty, it has been moved by Tom Minowitz. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Carmen Shaw. All in favor by show of hands, and it is unanimous. We are now in closed session. So board members, if you will please remain, and we will excuse others. Thank you.